Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our digital panel, Music and Activism, Singing Your Truth. My name is Alicia Warwick. I'm the Executive Director of the Recording Academy Nashville chapter. In celebration of LGBTQIA+ Pride Month, we have invited an amazing group of industry professionals to share their personal stories and discuss their careers, challenges, and support received over the years. All right, let's jump in and get started. The first panelist I would like to introduce is a singer-songwriter making queer Southern pop out of Nashville, Tennessee. His debut album, Southern Curiosity, was released in April 2021 with over 7.5 million listens on Apple Music's coming soon. He has also had cuts by Little Big Town, Christina Aguilera, Anderson East, and many others. Please welcome Fancy Haygood.
Hi.
Our next panelist, Trixie Mattel, is a singer, actor, drag queen, and recognized skinny legend. Trixie is the winner of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars Season 3, a Billboard Heat Seekers #1 charting recording artist, and one half of a comic duo with Cartier on YouTube and Netflix. Trixie most recently dropped the Full Coverage Volume 1 EP, which includes a critically acclaimed cover of Jackson featuring Orville Peck. And I'm thrilled to welcome Trixie Mattel. Next, we have Katie Pruitt, who has been highlighted as one of NPR Music's Slingshot 20 Artists to Watch in 2019, Rolling Stone's 10 Country Artists You Need to Know, and Southwest Magazine's Artists on the Rise. She released her debut album, Expectations, to critical acclaim in February 2020, and will be embarking on a U.S. headline tour this fall. I'm happy to welcome Katie Pruitt.
Hey, what's up?
Next, we have Stephanie Smith. She's a Grammy-nominated songwriter who has penned #1 hits for artists like Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, Trisha Yearwood, and Reba McEntire, to name a few, and produced artists like Maggie Rose, Shelley Fairchild, and Liz Rose. She has won BMI Song of the Year and BMI Songwriter of the Year, has had 5 NSAI #1 awards, and has been named Billboard Breakthrough Writer of the Year. I'd like to welcome Stephanie Smith.
Hey, guys.
And lastly, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening's program. He is the host of Proud Radio on Apple Music Country. He curates and hosts the From Nashville Music Talks interview series at the 92nd Street Y, featuring in-depth conversations with artists including Willie Nelson, Wynonna, Brandi Carlile, and more. Recently, Hunter is also co-host of the All Our Favorite People podcast with Ashley Eicher. Please join me in welcoming Hunter Kelly.
You did the hard part. That's a lot of reading. Thank you so much. So before we get started, I want to quickly go over the communication guidelines for this panel. So you can chat amongst yourselves using the chat feature. But if you have any questions, use the Q&A function. So you can put your questions in there. And then if time permits at the end, we will get to some of your questions. So I just want to go around first and get everybody's pronouns. So I'm Hunter, he, him. Katie?
She, her.
Okay, Stephanie?
I have no idea.
Trixie?
Yeah.
I'm fine with anything.
Yeah.
What is it, Fancy? With me, that'd be me. Just call me me. Just call me Stephanie.
I'll call you Stephanie.
Yeah, whatever works for you. I'm he, him.
All right. Well, let's get started. Pronouns are a really big thing. I know in hosting Proud Radio and Apple Music Country, it's something we talk about a lot, with artists feeling like, okay, should I make this universal and just use you so that straight people will feel comfortable? So I really want to take this to Stephanie first, and listening to some of your biggest hits, like It's Your Love, Tim McGraw and Faith Hill, Reba's How Was I to Know? It really is that universal you. So I'm wondering, how have you seen that change over the years with artists being able to, queer artists being able to use same-sex pronouns or references that would, out them pretty much, or who they are?
I mean, it's refreshing. It kind of went, from my perspective, it went 0 to 60. It was something you didn't do to something that was accepted. It seemed like overnight to me, Katie may feel different about that, but I remember a time when I was singing out that I would have to sing in a generic form of the song. But now I feel like, I won't have a tomato tossed at me if I sing shit,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm just wondering, the rest of you, I know that listening to your music, this is something that is not as pressing for what you've been doing for the most part, but I'm just wondering, is there a time where you started hearing, yourself reflected in songs? Like, what were some of those first moments where you heard, like for Katie, a woman singing to another woman, or that kind of thing? Like, what was that, or what was a breakthrough there for you all?
Um, for me, I remember, I think Stephanie's right. It really did go from like 0 to 100. And I feel like it was around maybe like, I don't know, I don't want to get like, the dates wrong, but I think it was like around like 2014, 2015 or something. But like, I remember I was in college still, and I was still kind of like timid about pronouns. And yeah, then hearing someone like Brandy Carlisle, even though she's still wasn't explicitly like she, maybe, or I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure she didn't though. And like, but the fact that she was an out gay woman and that was celebrated was kind of like a green light for someone like me, or someone, other people like me, I think, to be like, well, maybe if she's celebrated for being who she is, like maybe people can start being a bit more explicit. And when I say explicit, I just mean using their pronouns that are, that are accurate and truthful, like saying like loving her, or, something like that. And have that be something that is celebrated. Yeah.
For myself, I can't really think of a song that I heard where I saw myself reflected, other than when I was growing up listening to like, the divas. I know you love that, Hunter.
Oh yes, I do.
Literally having to listen to female artists and them sharing their stories and their view on love. And I had to like reach to that because it's the only thing that was close to a resemblance of how I felt. So when I was getting my first deals, I remember so often being told in writing rooms, being told in A&R rooms, because I was never shy about who I was singing about or what I was singing about, because I'm very flamboyantly gay. So it sounded ridiculous to me to be like singing about women. Like, I don't know who was like believing that. But I just remember being told to be as ambiguous as possible, to be accepted, to be palatable, and I honestly, just at a young age, when I was like starting to work in music, I literally in my head was like, this will be the hill I die on. I do not want to sing about anything other than what I'm writing about. So I was putting out music in 2015 that had references to boys. I had a song called Boys Like You, and it literally didn't go to radio because I was told it wasn't palatable enough for it to be, it was my highest streamed song at the time. And I was told it wasn't, palatable enough for middle America. And I would like to remind them, I am middle America. But I don't think I really ever had that, really, like, not that to my knowledge, like songs from men about other men. I don't know that I had heard that.
Yeah. Trixie, what about for you? By the way, I loved your documentary, Moving Parts. I feel like I learned a lot about, your love of country music, and also, bringing country music and drag, which, here in Nashville, we have our Dolly and Reba drag queens, but really, I mean, for you to do original music as your original self, as Trixie, is a breakthrough. So yeah, I'm just wondering about, especially going into more of the country and Americana you've been, what you have, just.
I remember I started guitar at 13, and I would say at like 4. It's kind of cliche, but when I got the Melissa Etheridge album, Yes I Am, I had never even imagined that somebody would sing that type of music and she's talking about her like secret, intense relationships with women. And the songwriting, I mean, her voice, all of it, I just was like hook, line, and sinker. Some of those B-sides on that album, like I Will Never Be the Same and Yes I Am, where I'm just like, oh my God, this is so good. And then when I discovered the B-52s, you have men and women putting on costumes and wigs to go sing the most bizarre music you've ever heard.
Oh, yeah.
But they do it so joyously that on the radio, even in, middle Americana, Love Shack comes on and they're like, well, it's Love Shack, I love it.
Yeah, it's Love Shack.
So the way that people use costumes to sort of like, they didn't have to acknowledge their gender or their sexuality. They're in a wig. They're space aliens, really, so it makes it very palatable.
And we should point out that RuPaul is in the video for Love Shack.
He is. He is, yeah.
Looking fabulous.
Yeah, that video holds up.
It really does. It really does. Um, so, what would you say has been your biggest challenge or setback as a member of the LGBTQIA community operating within an industry that, I mean, the world has pretty much historically been heterosexual and cisgender, Um, but, we heard a little bit about it with your song Fancy coming in and being told, hey, this is not going to fly with middle America. So, I guess if anybody has anything that pops to mind, what's the biggest challenge or setback you've had um, there coming into this industry?
I mean, yeah, I touched on it with the Boys Like You stuff. I think just the fact that there's, a very small amount of queer artists who are like at the forefront of, every chart. There's not that many. So it's like it's uncharted territory in some direction. So a lot of fear-based decisions are made around artists like all of us. And I just can't even get into how traumatizing some of the conversations I've had via management, via A&R, via other songwriters, other producers, talking to me about how, as an artist, I'm not palatable, or if I say it this way, it's not gonna fly, or you can't be successful if you don't do it this way. So my biggest challenge has always been refusing to not be myself. I didn't become fancy when I was 20 years old. I didn't come out of the closet to be anything other than myself. And my passion is music. And so I've kind of made a commitment to myself from day one that I am who I am, and I'm not going to change that for anyone. And, it's helped me and it's hurt me. There's definitely some doors that open for me because of that. And there's some doors that slammed because of that. So I think that's been the hardest thing, is just understanding that there's still a lot of people even today that don't view me and my narrative and my story as palatable. And that's kind of a hard thing to like swallow.
Yeah. Stephanie, I'm wondering, what you've seen as far as like being able, with LGBTQIA people making more inroads over the past few years, especially here in Nashville. I'm wondering how it's been for you adjusting to that, to being able to be free, because I know for me, when I watch the TV show Love Victor on Hulu, which I'm just obsessed with. So they're in season 2, and there's 2 boyfriends, and they're going down the hall at their high school holding hands, or they'll kiss at the basketball game. And I'm like, there's part of me that's like, oh, I hope they're okay. When I'm just like, okay, I've got to adjust myself, So I'm wondering, have you felt any of that, Stephanie?
Yeah, because I've been here since Jesus was a boy, so I've seen lots of changes. I was fairly undercover, just not talking about it. It was kind of hard to hide it, but not talking about it when I first got here. But then, I just let everybody know. I thought, I'm not going to live like that in this town. I didn't. Where I was from, everybody knew I was out. And but back to your question about the challenge, and seeing things coming into fruition, and seeing things and being stunned by what you see on TV, it's just refreshing, and I'm slightly relieved, but I know there's more work for us to do, right?
Yeah.
But being here, the biggest challenge I faced was working with an artist, and then singing on that artist's record. Shelley Fairchild, everybody knows. But anyway, singing on that record, and her being on Sony at the time, and she's told the story, so I don't think I'm leaking anything. But she was she was told, you need to get new background singers because everybody knows Stephanie's out, and da 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 da. Yeah, right. And she was like, well, I'm really not going to do that, and then it was, maybe you need to stop writing with her. Well, I had 4 songs on her first record, and anyway, so that was daunting. And then to kind of watch that melt for her was really hard, to see like 9 months go by and other people being pushed to the forefront. and then the struggle she went through, leaving the record leaving the record label and the whole 9 yards. But that has been a big challenge. It's like I didn't hear anything head on, face to face, to my face, but it always came through some other way. You know, it came, in this case, it came through the artist, and it was just, it's like a shock to the heart. It's like an arrow, you know, it just hits you like that. But you rise above. What are they going to do? Take your craft away from you? Take your ability away? It just wasn't going to happen. Yeah. So I viewed it as an obstacle and something I had to find a workaround for. Yeah. And we did, you know, and the rest is, you know, history. So, yeah.
I wonder about that, Trixie. I mean, I wonder about with workarounds and everything, you know, finding a way where, you know, because you have done so much pioneering with what you've done as Trixie.
Well, I feel like I get really lucky because dressing up the way you know, a character like Trixie gets me in the door so easily because it's so cool to look at. You know, nowadays everybody, let's be honest, wants their like diversity hire. You know, especially come June 1st, they're like, oh, get the cross-dresser, which is great. I will take your...
Which is great. We've got how many more days?
Yeah, I'll take I only have 10 more days to milk corporations. But what's funny is I will get in the door and then I'll get all these positive reviews of the records and the singles, but I hate that the sentiment is always, it's actually good. Because what you're saying is you went into it thinking that it couldn't be good. And I'll admit that cross-dressers aren't famous for having the most quality music. And that's what I often work against is like, how do I seem legitimate enough to get to do these things when apparently going into it, they're like, well, it's a drag queen song. It can't be good. And I'll say the other thing, I'm sure Fancy can attest to this, but within the LGBTQIA community, they're not the most inwardly supportive. So like, you know, if a straight, white, blonde woman was doing what Todrick Hall does, the gays would lose their minds. But because it's like an attractive queer black man, they're like, okay about it. So it's like we talk about how we get treated on the outside, but also on the inside, it's like gay people have a hard time supporting other gay people.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Go ahead.
I totally agree. And it is, I was just talking to friends about this, performing for me in like a pride event or an area that is predominantly gay is one of the more challenging places for me to perform because it's true. They do want to like see like a beautiful woman on stage, like standing in her power, because it's hard for them to see someone that mirrors them. And I'm guilty of this myself throughout my life, but it's hard to see someone that mirrors you standing in the limelight and standing in their confidence and standing in their, you know, their boldness and supporting that. It is hard sometimes, but I will say my experience in the music industry, there's a lie that's told to everyone. I think it's told to women. I think it's told to any minority group that there is only one seat at the table for someone like Trixie, or there's one seat at the table for someone like me or like Katie or like Stephanie. And when you're in it, you believe that, you know, when I was coming up and getting my first record deal and signing my first management, you know, who's like, everyone's in my ear being like, well, you know, Sam Smith is, that's what Sam Smith's doing. So you have to do, you know, you can either do what Sam Smith's doing or you can do what Troye Sivan's doing. Heaven forbid there be a lane for Fancy to be Fancy. Like, you know, you can't just put me in a suit, throw me at a piano, tell me to sing a sad song and think that we're going to win. That's not me being me. There's someone already doing that. And I will say something that I got wrong in my career early on was believing that lie that there was one table or there was one seat at that table. And I feel like because I believed that lie, I gave my seat away. And I think there's room for everyone. And especially if, you know, you keep going for it and you keep doing you and you keep showing up as yourself, you're going to be inspiring someone somewhere. And I'm just kind of like, I'm 30 now and I just can't believe that lie that there's only one seat at the table, you know. And it's just kind of like, I think that atmosphere and those things being said to queer people, because I think it's being said to queer people outside of the music industry, and it creates this atmosphere that we can't support each other, because if you're succeeding, I can't succeed. If you're getting that, I can't have that too. And that's just not true. It's not true. So it's just a lie that, I think any minority group is being told. And I think it's time we stop telling that lie and we quit believing that lie as queer people.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely felt that as well. And it was great to see TJ Osborne in Esquire this past week talking about feeling like, going from, oh my gosh, I'm gay, but that's not all I am. And that's not all I bring to the table, to, oh my God, I'm gay and this is a big part of who I am. And I wish that I had embraced it and talked about it sooner. So in saying that and encouraging more queer artists to come in behind us, how do we take on that role of helping keep the door open behind us and not just like, okay, we're in, so now, not worrying about the LGBTQIA folks coming behind us?
That's a good question. I think it's like I think it's with LGBT. I think it's also with like people of color. Like, I think like, just being mindful, and like, if there's something that you can do for somebody that you think deserves an opportunity, like make those intros. And like, like, I don't know, I'm sure we've all been like, because we've been told that lie, like Fancy said, maybe there's been a time where we maybe could have made an intro and didn't. It's like, that's like not chill because there is room, like there is plenty of opportunities. And I think if you all ships rise together, like that saying, like if you lift someone up, like they're gonna lift you up and it's gonna come back around. So I think like that attitude is better than than the competitiveness of the music industry. So there's already enough of that,
Yeah.
I think also not letting, so many times in my life has someone been like, well, yeah, you're gay, but that's not the most interesting thing about you. Like, there's so much more to you than being gay. And that's like a fine sentiment, whatever. But being gay is a big part of my life. My queerness has walked in the room before I did for my entire life. People knew I was gay before I even was saying it. And so the fact that people try to minimize my queerness and try to tell me that it's not a big deal or it's not a big thing, but yet, it's part of almost, it's a daily conversation for me. I'm having to either explain myself or, help someone understand or talk about it in some way, shape, or form. And I think for myself, what I want to do moving forward and what I've been trying to do in my artistry is let my queerness lead the way. Let my queerness be what is special about me, what does set me apart, because it does, telling these stories, telling my story. No one else is living my life. No one else is having my experience. So it's important for me in my songwriting and in my artistry to put all of myself, all of my big gay self into it and not take anyone minimizing that. I want to tell my story. And that's all I want to do. So, and that would be my advice to anyone trying to do it as well, is to be yourself fully, even if you feel like people are minimizing who you are. It's like, you can't let them do that.
Yeah.
Or to tell you like, oh, if you're gonna do this, Fancy, you need to be like Sam Smith. It's like, no, because you're not Sam Smith, you're Fancy, and you've lived a different life. And expressing, digging into the sorry, go ahead.
Well, especially since if Sam Smith hadn't come out, they would have never said to you, you need to be like Sam Smith.
Exactly.
And
But
I was
when he
trying to
says
tell
he's
them,
gay, suddenly you need to
I'm
be
not Sam Smith, I'm sadder. You know what I mean?
Damn.
He's happier than I am.
I'm
It's like,
kidding, that was a joke.
I feel like my generation, we kind of pushed on that door to get out and to be forward about our lives. And your generation has just gone, you just slammed it down. It's done. But I don't think we can ever relax with that. You see what happens in other minorities. They have to keep focused and keep moving forward. And I think that's, why we're here today, is to keep moving forward and pushing, making sure those doors stay open, because they do want to slam shut, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. We're going to talk about something right now, and I'm not going to say anything specific or talk about anybody specific, but you can probably figure it out.
I will.
I thank you. So, if an artist in the spotlight uses homophobic or derogatory language on stage or in the media, how does that affect how we view that artist, but also the people that surround that artist? So, if an artist goes and uses homophobic language, and then this other artist collaborates with them, how do we respond? Does is that co-signing their behavior?
It's hard. When I was watching the news last year, I would be like, at this point, I used to be the person who said, let's reach across the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
But after last year, I'm almost at the point where I'm like, cut those people out of your life. However, when it's like your dad or something, it's not that black and white.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard because context obviously matters. I want to give the human spirit the benefit of the doubt and go, well, maybe that person doesn't understand the gravity of that word,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe that person, we don't personally know those people.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard because we could be black and white about it, but the black and white of it is what makes like canceling, etc. So like
Mm-hmm.
endless. It has no ending. It has no resolution.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to not forget it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I got a few years ago, this magazine wrote this horrible article about me and some really off-color stuff. And then they interviewed me a few years later, and I sat down for the interview and they were like, how are you? I was like, good. Do you remember 2 years ago when you guys wrote this article? And I just brought up the picture and showed the article. And then I got an apology later. But I guess the point of it is, don't ever forget that that person like nonchalantly showed their colors a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean you need to like slap them at brunch, but like, don't let them forget about it.
Yeah.
I liked what you said about like, I don't know, not canceling, because I think then there's no opportunity for a conversation. And like, it's like, it's tough to talk about in like broad strokes too. So like,
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to just like take a group of people that likes an artist that said something homophobic or racist and
Mm-hmm.
say, well, no, now all of them are homophobic and racist. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not. But when you're talking to an individual like person, there is an opportunity for a conversation there, and like approaching it, maybe just being like, so like, why do you still support that artist?
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you know they said this? Like, I don't know. There's like, instead of just sweeping it under the rug and just not talking about it, or just writing them off completely and addressing them with anger, I don't know, then you're not allowing that flow of conversation and that for them to think for themselves and realize, ooh, maybe I shouldn't support that person. Like maybe that was messed up. I don't know.
I mean, my bread and butter is in comedy, and in comedy, we're always talking about, can we separate the person from the joke? If you don't like a joke, they told like when the Kevin Hart thing happened. I love Kevin Hart. I love all his specials. If I watch his special, one of the jokes upsets me, or I think is like over the line or anti-gay, it doesn't mean I hate the special. I mean, that joke wasn't for me. So I guess when artists do things like that, I'm a little cautious to like pour gas on them entirely, because I didn't like one thing.
I think I'm with you on that. I think it's hard for me to get to a point to just like want to cancel someone altogether. I think there has to be room because we're all human, we're all flawed. And I think sometimes artists specifically, because they have such a platform, I think examples are made out of them, and not to excuse people's actions. I mean, I think people should have to speak to the things they say and the things they do. People should be held accountable. But I do think cancel culture is so dangerous because we're all up on the line, and we're all bound to make a mistake at some point or the other. And I know that I'm learning every single day. I grew up in Arkansas. There's not a lot that I was taught about, political correctness in Arkansas. And so I know that I'm learning every single day. And I would hate to be the person that was just very anti anyone. That's exactly what I think what we're all fighting against is people being anti us. So I think to fight fire with fire is kind of pointless. And I also just kind of, when it comes to like homophobia and stuff like this, I try to really understand, because for myself, I had so much homophobia for myself for so long that was internalized. And It took me a very long time in my own life to get past that. And it took a lot of therapy and a lot of conversations and a lot of meeting people that did not grow up where I grew up, and traveling and seeing more of the world and seeing more queer culture before I really could understand myself and accept myself. So when someone's homophobic, the only thing I think about it is that they're not knowledgeable. They don't know what I know. They haven't experienced what I experience. And so I try to have a little bit more compassion. That being said, I do think if someone's ignorant, they should be held responsible and held accountable and speak to why they're that way, you know?
And if they keep on, then
Yeah. Yeah, if they keep on, then they're out.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe there should be like a punch card situation.
Yeah.
So many times to
Yeah,
make
I'm like,
that.
listen, I hope life treats you kind and you have all
And I
you've
hope
ever
nobody
dreamed
thinks
of.
I'm a, but like I also don't think obviously nobody's born homophobic too. So I always think about
Right.
that. Like this is somebody reciting something that was burned into their brain is okay. It's like a hate the sin, not the sinner thing. I know that we're supposed to be a little more ferocious than that, but I just always try to think of the person. That's someone's mom or brother or something, you know.
Sorry, we had a great comment. Okay, so let's move on to people who are making a great impact. Who are some of the LGBTQIA plus creators you look up to who've inspired you either in the past or right now?
Who's going? Okay, I'll say Indigo Girls for sure. Brandy Carlisle. Yeah, those are mine. I'll think of more later, but I'll circle back.
Yeah, what is it about them, how they operate, that inspires you?
I mean, I don't know. They're just sort of unapologetic. Both, the Indigo Girls and Brandy are just kind of both unapologetically themselves. And they kind of both gave me the courage to, just by existing, talk a little bit more specifically about my experience, and gave me the courage to do so. So.
Yeah. Stephanie, does anybody come to mind? I'm wondering also about, queer songwriters in Nashville that you've known, because while out country artists are a relatively new thing, LGBTQ songwriters have been around quite a bit longer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I slowly learned who my crew was, and and that they were, way easier for songwriters for sure to be who we are. But initially, when my generation, when Elton John popped out with his blazing glory self, I was like, oh, okay, so this is a thing. This is a colorful thing that's there, and I kind of used him as an icon. Like, he's doing it, so can I, So.
Awesome.
I always loved. I always ended up liking the women, like Melissa Etheridge. I was obsessed with the Runaways. Obviously, I love the B-52s. I saw Joan Jett when I was 16. It like blew my mind, changed my life. I'd never seen like a woman of a certain age. She's in like leather pants, singing explicitly about like sex, and I was like, oh my god. So definitely all of those. And then RuPaul, when you think of the ability to like, kind of be the Bugs Bunny in drag, or like make it funny and still make it sexy in a way that can sell. I always think of that too.
Oh yeah, all the time I think about, I was 11 years old in Alabama, and all of us knew Supermodel You Better Work by RuPaul, like in 1992. It's like revolutionary.
Or there's certain people who aren't necessarily queer either, but like Elvira, like making it being like sexual but not explicit, so that she can like have her boobs out and be ridiculous and still like have your grandma think she's acceptable.
Also, I want to give a shout out to Madonna, who did have her boobs out at Pride this past week in New York.
She sure did.
Fancy, who comes to mind for you?
There's a couple. I feel like I have like categories of like where people fit for me here, because like Trixie, I grew up listening to all the females, and I gravitated towards that, and that's where I found myself feeling the most myself. So like the Spice Girls, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Beyonce, Lady Gaga. Also, Dolly Parton has always been an icon for me. When it comes to like LGBT queer people, for me, it wasn't until I lived in Nashville where I started seeing like the Brandy Clarks of the world and Shane McAnally and Jason Owen, people working in this industry, making space for people like me. Because when I moved here, I was 17, and it was like pretty much no-go about the whole gay thing. Like, it was just kind of awkward. No one knew what rooms to put me in for writing and stuff like that. And then as Brandy Clark and Shane were like just, blowing up, it made it a lot easier for me to find co-writers. And then Casey Musgraves, an artist that so boldly spoke about, accepting LGBT people here in Nashville and singing songs about it, really inspired me. And it really made me want to be here in Nashville all the time. Like, it made it feel like a more inclusive place, not just in Nashville, but on Music Row. So I would say like Brandy, Shane McAnally, and Casey are probably my three people here.
Amen. Amen to that. I mean, it was such a huge thing with Casey's second record, the album release show being at Play and her having drag queens perform the songs. Like,
Yeah.
it was one of those moments where I've been to so many album release shows, but now this is in the club where I am on Saturday nights. And it was the bringing together of those worlds. So yeah, I love seeing that. Well, and also,
Hey, Hunter, I would also be amiss to not bring up Stephanie. Stephanie,
yeah,
I didn't say it because we're sitting on this together, and I don't want to be a brown noser, but Stephanie's one of the first people of the LGBT songwriting community I met here, and it was a very safe place for me to be myself and very inspiring, and pretty much, I mean, an icon and a legend. Like, if you look at the song she's written, and it's pretty insane. And I just remember being like, I can't believe I'm writing with Stephanie. And it's just kind of like, so like moments like that, they're still up here, and it means a lot to me because it's writers and creators like Stephanie that made room for people like me and Katie here in Nashville, and I'm not missing that.
Thanks. I will buy you dinner, Fancy, for second.
Thanks, because I'm broke.
No, but yeah, that was a fun day.
It was so much fun.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about touring for those of you on the road. So have you ever been in an area where on the road touring where you were uncertain about your safety? Has that ever come up, or are there any steps you take when arriving somewhere where you're not really 100% certain? I imagine a lot of that would be ironed out beforehand, but I just wonder if that ever comes up for you. Anybody?
I'm very lucky because out of drag, I'm very like unassuming. I just look like someone's uncle. I wouldn't say I'm passing, but I mean, I dress extremely normal out of drag, and all my exciting clothing is in a normal looking suitcase. So I luck out, and I mean, anywhere I'm going is usually there's a bubble of queer people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get booked in a homophobic small town, believe it or not. I will say, one time I was with my band in Boston. We were playing Newbury Comics to promote Barbara when the record came out. And we're up early, 10 a.m. I was in drag. We're getting in a car to go to the comic book store. And there was, of course, it's Boston, a day drunk guy, 10 a.m., blackout drunk on the street. And he called me a faggot, and he, was yelling disgusting at us. And my band, who's all straight, bless their hearts, they'd never been homophobicized in their life. They got so mad, and they were trying to jaywalk and go fight this guy. And I'm like, we got to go play. Like, I'm trying to reel them back in.
This is work.
And they're like hulking out. They got the veins in the neck. They're all pissed. And it occurred to me, they don't know how to let it go because they've never been called a faggot before.
Mm-hmm.
This is their first time getting genuine homophobia earnestly slung at them.
Yeah.
And they're not pros like I am. So that was just so interesting to me. It's like, oh, they're freaking out because they've never been on this side of this earnestly,
Right. Did you fall in love with any of them after that? Because I would have, if anyone does. That.
I didn't fall in love with them, but I did become scared of them. But like, I better not piss them off ever.
I've never been anywhere where I felt intimidated, even when I'm like in my fanciest get ups. I'm 6'2" and 260. I don't really know if anyone wants to like tango with me like that, but I've had my fair share of, moments like that. People like hollering at me from across the way, or everyone's brave when they're like a good, like 100 feet away. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I've never felt like threatened or like someone was. There was an interesting moment in 2015. I was headlining a Pride event in Louisville, and it was right after the Orlando shooting, and we were in a gay bar. And it's not that I felt unsafe, like for my own safety in that moment, but it was like weird to think about people doing what I was doing with my friends, dealing with something like that. And I know that's not an exclusively a gay thing. Shootings like that are happening way too much in pretty much everywhere. But like sitting in play in Louisville with my friends thinking like that could have been us. Like it did send a little bit of fear through me then. And that's the only time I've ever had like a fear in like a gay scenario.
I've never felt like threatened, like physically, but I don't know. Maybe it's back to like there's no room conversation like Fancy was saying, but like I've always, before I released Expectations, I only opened for like male, like hetero dudes. And then, me coming on stage as like a obviously gay girl, and then especially when you start listening to the lyrics of the song, you're like, oh, this girl's very gay and like went through some shit. Can I cuss?
What a combo.
Yeah, and like is talking about it openly in front of a room, in like places like in the Midwest and rooms where maybe like they're maybe some older generational gaps there, it definitely like it was like awkward after the set in a lot of places, but it was never like, we're gonna beat you up because you're gay. But it was like, I could feel some tension for sure, but I've never been physically threatened, thank God.
God.
But if somebody tries to hit on my girlfriend, I get pissed. So
yeah, bow up. So I want to ask about. Okay, we'll stay in this place of difficulty, and then we'll go back into a place of sunshine. Have you ever found yourself working with someone who might not approve or agree with who you are? And did you continue that relationship or end it?
I have my guitar player Zach. Okay, I found when I hired him, his bio on Instagram was that he loves Jesus, and maybe I'm in a homo bubble. I assume that was a joke. So I just was like, well, that's funny. It's very serious. And then later when I realized like, oh wow, he like prays before shows. Like this is real. And then once I was like, I gotta ask you a question about God. And he was like, yeah, what is it? He's like, I'm open book. I go, if you love God so much, how do you play with me? And like, is that weird for you? Is that weird for people in your life when they see you on tour with me, when you see them at church on Sunday? And he was like, well, the loudest, most crazy, extreme Christians get on the news. Like, but most of us, he's like, people like me, we have like LGBT counseling, free HIV testing at our church. We volunteer at prides. And it was a learning moment for me where I didn't give someone the benefit of the doubt. Like I was being closed-minded because I thought there was kind of one type of Christian. And that was like mind-blowing to me that people could like earnestly be faithful and not have a problem with me. Anyway.
That's awesome.
I can relate to that, Trixie. A lot of I grew up in the South where I know when someone says they love Jesus in a bio, they are not kidding. And a lot of my trauma stems from the church and organized religion. So I kind of also have had to work on that for myself to not be closed-minded when it comes to other people's beliefs.
Totally.
Because it's not always, it's not always that, but it is triggering, so that is hard. I have been in a writing room where someone casually used that phrase. Well, I don't mind that you're gay, but I'm a Christian and I choose to hate the sin and love the sinner. And I just remember like sitting there thinking like, what a weird thing to say to me. And then like, we're not even like close to finishing the song. And I'm just like sitting here having to think about how we have this disconnect, because I can't imagine a world where I said that to someone, or where I made someone feel less than welcome in a writing room because of something that they can't help. Again, I tried to lean towards that they don't know what I know, so it's knowledge that I have that they don't, and I can have compassion there. But I did end that writing session immediately and left. I didn't confront them on it because it's not worth it for me. I just decided, you know what? That's fine. I'm out of here, and I don't want to write with people like that. It's like it does, like, it's triggering. It sits you back. Like, it's just not worth being in rooms like that.
It's been amazing for me to like not have anybody say anything to my face, but stuff gets back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, you don't even have the guts to confront me. But then after I hear what they said or see them at a bar or on the road or something, and they want to come up and talk to me like everything's normal, I go the other way. I cannot tolerate it,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Sunshine, baby,
So
sunshine.
let's do some sunshine, y'all. Sunshine and lollipops, and no, it's great. I mean, all of you, your music has been so inspiring to me. I've either played it on my show, had you on my show, or just have all of your music in my personal collection. So this has just been a real treat. And yes, so this question is from Nakia. Trixie. You've become one of the biggest and busiest stars in drag, and your original music continues to wow. Do you struggle to find time to write and demo tunes? And on that note, when will we get more new songs from you?
Well, I find that last year during lockdown, I wrote my new record, which is, we're 10 tracks in. I wrote the happiest record ever. Because I don't know about you guys, I always write the happiest music when I feel the worst. And then when my life is great, I have like melodramatic fantasies and then write sad songs. You know what I mean? So I go through phases. I don't know what you guys' process is. I go through phases where I'll write a bunch of songs in like a week or two and then take a break for like a month, 2 months. I just get really inspired and spit a bunch out, or at least big chunks. And then I'll kind of forget about it for a while, then take a break. And then I like to come back and listen. And then if I like it 6 weeks later, then it's good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the night you write it, you're like, oh, I'm about to. Everybody's gonna be, and then the next day you're like, I don't know about that. So it's just about balance. I don't try to force it. I mean, I'm an independent artist. I know you guys are songwriters. You are at the mercy of deadlines. I get to write at my own pace, so I'm kind of lucky.
Yeah. Of course, Fancy, you've been on basically a co-host on Leslie Jordan's Apple Music Country Show. So I've enjoyed spending that we're co-workers basically now, Fancy. That's very exciting. But what's up with you as far as your record and touring coming up?
Well, I independently released my debut album in April of this year. We were trying to do that last year, and lots of life just kept happening. I got hit by that tornado. Like everyone else, the pandemic kind of slowed it all down. And so I've just been kind of like slowly, releasing music. The album came out in April. And as far as touring, I'm doing like a headlining show that we're about to announce in Nashville very soon. And, we're still trying to find the right spots as far as touring outside of Nashville. We're still trying to figure that out.
Awesome. Stephanie, what have you been working on now that we're coming out of this interesting time of quarantine and lockdown?
Well, I'm just producing a little bit. I've got going into mixing an artist that graduated from Belmont a year and a half, 2 years ago, and almost finished with her record, and writing some shows for Sync, and just, still just writing for myself,
Great. Yeah. Katie,
What's up?
give us an update on this next record. I see you teasing us footage from the studio.
Yeah, I mean, I've just kind of been slowly recording demos and writing new songs. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to tell, you know. I'm still working it out. I'm still figuring it out. I definitely wrote a ton of songs last year, but I'm still kind of figuring out what the through line is because
Mhm.
I love that about records, how there's kind of like a theme or a through line, and I think you got to write a ton of songs before you figure that out. So, you know, I don't know. I'm working on it.
Awesome.
And then I'm going on tour this fall, which I'm stoked about because, yeah, like Fancy mentioned, had plans to do that in 2020, and 2020 had different plans for me. So, you know,
Yeah, we got to get another mural at Grammys because I
yeah,
think
Joni Mitchell.
Joni Mitchell just replaced you. What's it like? What's it like to know that Joni Mitchell? I guess if anybody's going to be painted over you, Joni
I,
Mitchell's a great one.
It's kind of what I said. I mean, you know, I didn't mind it. I
Yeah,
honestly it was a really cool thing that they left it up as long as they did. You know, Grammys was a huge supporter of me last year, and you know they're my friends, and I was just it was weird to like some weeks not even feel like a musician or an artist, and then like drive down Trinity Lane and be like,
yeah,
wow, my community like has my
yeah.
back. You know, like that's a cool feeling. You know.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, the Grammys is a record store here in Nashville, and they have it's like Tower Records did back in the day. They have paintings of albums, and it's just something I love that that's made a comeback. But yeah, okay, we have one last question. Want everybody to answer from Alyssa. Has there ever been a moment in your career where you knew you had made a difference for someone, like some of your heroes had done for you? So, is there ever a moment where someone came up to you, you heard a story?
I have a lot of fans who only know me from, Drag Race and stuff, and they traditionally don't listen to like Americana or folk or anything, and they're always saying like, "You got me into that type of music."
Mm-hmm.
Or the
That's
number
great.
of auto harps sold, I'm sure, has skyrocketed in the drag fan community. But but people tell me like, "Oh, you're the first like folk album I ever had. Now I like it." I'm like, "Well, that's great."
Yeah. I love the auto harp. Trixie, did you ever watch Knots Landing, the TV show in the 80s?
No,
Okay, we'll
too
talk about
young.
this. We'll talk about this later. Yeah. There was an auto harp on it, and I just wondered if it's also one of those things where I realize I'm getting older, and there are people that weren't even alive when that show was on.
Oh
Anyway,
yeah.
Fancy, has there ever been a moment, or anybody else for that matter?
I'm getting
Anybody
to
that
the
can take this?
age, and I've been in Nashville for so long now that a lot of younger songwriters are now coming up to me and telling me that they loved my music when they were in high school.
Oh Lord.
So I think maybe I'm shaping their lives. I don't know. But honestly, the biggest compliment to me is when artists that I love reach out wanting to write, because
Mm-hmm.
songwriting is pretty much the backbone of my artistry. And when artists I love reach out wanting to collaborate in that way, it's just the biggest compliment for me. So that's kind of how I keep track of if I'm still relevant or not.
I
I had someone come to my show and like talk to me at the merch table and tell me that one of my songs helped her come out to her parents, which was
Oh, wow.
pretty crazy. And you know, I don't know. I think maybe multiple artists gave me the courage to do that, but that still was like, damn, like and that was kind of one of those moments that recalibrated me and reminded me like, yeah, that's why I am singing my truth, to circle back about what this panel is called. But yeah, that's why I'm being so explicit and specific. Is for people like that. So
It's a big deal.
I would say that I sat in a lot of writing sessions with a lot of songwriters that wanted to come out and, asking me the questions of how'd you do it? Were you afraid? Has it affected your career? The answer was, I don't care. And sitting in a lot of rooms with artists at the time that wanted to come out and, how do I do it? Same questions,
Mhm.
so I feel like I've participated and helped along the way, maybe a little bit with those questions and fears,
Yeah. So, do y'all think in this day and age, that there's, I guess that the advice would have changed over the last few years, or maybe even the last year, on what you say when somebody's like, "I want to come out." It's not at this point. You're not going to be the first or even second or third. And so, is there comfort in that? Is there comfort in numbers?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think now when people come out, they could be a pretty big star and maybe not even get a headline. I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
could be like weeks of news because you have a girlfriend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, look how young JoJo Siwa is. And look how fast. I talked about it for like a day and moved on. If a teenage girl came out who was a children's star 15 years ago, she'd be labeled like a pervert.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. It's something to celebrate. Pretty soon, people will call their publicists and say I'm gay, and they'll go, "Who cares?" and hang up. And it's gonna be great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, this has
guys.
been so great, and thank you, Fancy, Trixie, Katie, and Stephanie, for being so honest today and really opening up. And I just want to say, I'll keep doing your thing, keep making music. Thank you to the Recording Academy for making this conversation possible.